So I'm part of the AFCENT Ninth Air Force. I'm based out of Shaw. There are no F-15s at Shaw. I do all my flying for the Eagle TDY, a little bit at Langley, but they were transitioning, as I previously discussed, primarily at Eglin, and also with some of the guard units around. And the wing is going to get an inspection, the 20th Fighter Wing, which are F-16 CJs, Block 50. They have 3 squadrons there, or they had 3 squadrons. And their wing commander knew that I'd be part of the inspection team. In fact, because I'm of a different MDS, Mission Design Series, since I'm an Eagle guy, there's a good chance that I will be in charge of the inspection at the lieutenant colonel level, because the other guys in the office were F-16 pilots that flew with that wing. So at least to give the appearance of objectivity, they're not going to let them grade the same guys that kind of control their day-to-day flying fate. Makes sense. So he wanted to cozy up to me, I think, as best as he could, and very wisely, just without even me asking, wrote a letter that said, "Hey, Shamu, you're going to be given this inspection. I'd like you to become familiar with our procedures and how we do things. You can fly in the back seat of any F-16 at any time that it's available without specific approval. Go forth, learn about us. We would like to show you what we're at." Classy move, smart move. And I was like, cool. There was one little hiccup to this. I had flown the T-38, which was two engine airplane. My wife was very, very supportive. Then I went to the Eagle 2-engine airplane, and she was really, really opposed to me flying single engine. Good news was I really didn't want to fly the Viper as a job. I wanted to fly the Eagle, but here was a very unique opportunity. So we actually staged our family down to Shaw. I was there alone for about a year because I had a daughter who was a senior in high school. We didn't want to upset that apple cart, getting ready for college and all that. So she was up in Langley. I also knew I was giving an inspection to Langley as soon as I arrived at Shaw. I was going to spend 6 months at Langley. Why move them when I'm going to be there anyways? So I call her on a Friday and I go, "Hey, Monday morning, there's an F-16 backseat sortie. It's with a guy in the office. He's really good. I know we don't fly single engine, but how about a one-time kitchen pass, right?" So she goes, "Okay, yeah." And I said, "They're the best F-16s in the fleet. They're, new block, 50s, good motors, all that stuff. We don't talk that weekend because she's busy with kids. I'm busy screwing off, whatever." I go in Monday morning, fly, and it's a 2-hop thing. The guy that I'm flying in the back seat with is giving a check ride to a weapons school guy in one of the squadrons. The first sortie is his check ride, like an instrument check, going out, just following him around, doing all that. Then we're going to come back, hot pit refuel, take off again, go off the coast and fight BFM, basically for fun, right, and training value. First sortie, uneventful. We get to the hot pits, uneventful for the most part. We take off again, and we're just going feet wet off the coast of South Carolina. If we look to the left, Myrtle Beach is about equidistant to this side as Charleston is to the right. So we're right in the middle between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. For those that are familiar, there's some warning areas off the coast. That's where we're going to fly BFM when the engine absolutely comes apart. I had, especially because of my A model time, lots of experience with compressor stalls. The A model was prone to compressor stalls at certain AOAs or throttle movements or whatever. And, we could dial one back, recover. And if not, we could turn that engine off, come home on the second engine, no big deal. This was a lot more impressive of a compressor stall than I had experienced before. And I had a little bit of fun with this when I had to talk to the Accident Investigation Board, which was led by a guy that I was very good friends with from previous assignments. So as what I told them was, at the time, it was the largest compressor stall I'd ever seen, and that could have been for 3 reasons. Number one, maybe it was, no kidding, the biggest compressor stall. Number two, where you sit in the F-16, you are much closer to the engine than you are in the Eagle. So maybe that was why it really got my attention. Or number 3, I knew I was in a single engine airplane and therefore I was really, really screwed. And so the board at that time started laughing and he turned off the tape. And use my pen. Go, Shamu, you can't do that. Not an official testimony. we need to keep this serious. I said, well, that was my moment to be a comedian. So anyways, the engine was gone. We did not know why. We had no idea why. He tried to restart it from the front a bunch of times, could not get it to go. He had me try from the back just in case there was something weird there, either moving the throttle. I forget exactly what it was. He made the decision to go towards Myrtle Beach, no longer had any military presence. He made the correct decision, to try to get to Charleston to see if we could get the airplane on the ground, dead stick land, if we're lucky. Turns out, no, that you use up so much energy. We're about 22,000 feet. You use up so much energy in a 90-degree-ish turn that there's no way. And we saw early on, as we were pointed to Charleston, that the math wasn't adding up. The other thing that didn't help, he tried to punch off the centerline tank. We had a centerline tank. It didn't come off. I tried to punch it off from the back. It didn't come off. It never came off, for reasons I can get into later. And then as we got close to Charleston, we decided, hey, we're not going to get there. We need to get out of this thing. So he tried to fly it basically up what's called the Ashley River. The couple funny parts. We're getting down to our controlled ejection altitude, and we're flying by the Citadel, which is a military college in Charleston. There's a whole bunch of cadets in their yard looking at this completely quiet, unbelievably silent F-16, and they're waving at us. So I waved back. He was a little bit busy up front, but I waved back. Then we punch out. The way that the sequence goes is the back seat goes first, because if the front seat went first, it would, fry you. When we pulled the handles, it did not work as advertised. What's supposed to happen is the canopy is supposed to explosively leave. It pulls a lanyard, which then sequences my seat in the back, his seat then a couple, seconds later, a small amount of time later in the front, and we both leave. The canopy did not leave the airplane. It just kind of went clunk and back about 2 or 3 inches. That was probably the time I was the most worried, because if that doesn't go, we don't go. If we don't go, we're done. Fortunately, the natural wind flow went underneath it and peeled off the canopy like a tuna can lid, and then it went out. So we got out a little bit lower than what we had planned on. Hindsight being 20/20, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't go that close to a minimum recommended controlled ejection altitude. I'd pad it a little bit more, but a lot of decisions ongoing at that point. And so then I went out, he went out, and we had what I would call the most perfect. He was a major, I was a lieutenant colonel, field grade landing zone. We landed on dry straw over wet, soft mud. And it's really funny what you think about. I don't really remember specifically leaving the airplane. I may have blacked out there just for a moment. I don't know. But I woke up, and the chute had opened, did our little procedural thing. And you think stupid things. The only thing I could think of is, man, I really don't want to land in the river and get all wet. The least important aspect of any of this. There is a mushroom cloud less than 1/10 of a mile away from me that is where the airplane impacted and blew up, which I think is in the pictures that I sent you. But for whatever silly reason, that's what I thought of. So I land, he lands, he's fine, I'm fine for the most part. A little bit shorter than when I took off that morning, but that was for the ejection seat. And there's a picture of me walking through the mud with my head kind of down, the parachute's dragging, I'm walking over to where the other guy is. And my wife goes, I know what you're thinking. I went, what? She goes, you're thinking, I have to call Betsy and tell her on my, well, actually second, but on the first day of me flying in a single engine airplane, I've now had to punch out a one. And she was right. So the Coast Guard has a base right there at Charleston. They picked us up off of the mud flat within about 5 minutes, which was pretty cool. They had us at a dock nearby within probably 10 minutes of us landing on the ground. What amazed me, and I actually ended up writing an article about some post-ejection ideas and considerations for the safety magazine for the Air Force. When we got to the dock, there was a fire chief there, which was nice. And I said, hey, do you have a cell phone? He goes, yep. And I said, could I borrow that real quick? He goes, sure, no problem. So I called Betsy and I said, hey, you may hear from the Air Force. You may see this on the news, but I just want you to know that I'm okay. And I'm trying to ease her into this. She goes, where are you? I said, I'm in Charleston. She goes, you weren't supposed to land in Charleston. Well, sweetie, we didn't exactly land in Charleston. And then she kind of put it together. And that phone call was useful because the wing commander, and I like teasing along this lines just because the Thunderbirds aren't my favorite part of the Air Force. I like the tactical Air Force. The wing commander was TDY. The vice wing commander was a former Thunderbird. So he ends up getting this, pile of stuff dumped on his lap of you've just lost an F-16. There are two guys we're trying to find, all that stuff. And he's at the command post and he gives, my wife was at a different house and he called our house and left the following message of, hey, this is Vice Wing Commander so-and-so. Your husband is punched out of an airplane. We are confident he's okay. If you have any questions, call me. No phone number, no nothing. And so I laughed at that just because he was a little flustered, and which is understandable. But fortunately, I'd already gotten through to her, so that message was not important. And then the things that we kind of developed after that is Charleston's a heavy base. People don't jump out of heavies. They either land properly or they die, right? So their flight surgeons, everybody really had no idea what to do with us. So we're like, hey, guys, I think you need to take our blood. We need to do some urine samples. There's things that the board is going to want that. And they're like, oh, that's a good idea. So that all developed. But the only last funny part of it was the guy that I flew with, Angus is his call sign. I won't use his real name. Really good guy and really good pilot and fun to do everything with. But he and I ended up being taken back to Shaw, which is about a 2-hour drive from Charleston, in an ambulance in the back, just sitting there with nothing to do. And I could tell he was really raking himself over the coals, which is understandable. It was his airplane. He's going, what did I do wrong? How come the engine wouldn't start? Did I miss something? And so I'm trying to distract him. So the lady had our vital signs from when they took him, and my blood pressure was relatively low, my pulse was down, and his was off the charts. So I just start needling him to try to get his mind off of it, going, hey, Angus, I'm really worried about you, dude. I think you need to go to the gym more, which is really funny because I'm this old, fat lieutenant colonel, that's about to retire, and he's younger and in better shape. But I'm like, yeah, those numbers, we need to get you to work out more. And he's like, just stop bothering me. I didn't realize I'm trying to distract him. But we get back. The really nice thing was the guy who ran the board that I knew from my Eagle time early on. I don't even know if he's supposed to or not, but he was very wise in doing this. He told Angus and myself, come to see me at this place. He took us down to the where the maintenance guys, they had pulled the engine out of the mud, and he showed him that the turbine was gone. A turbine, I actually have one. The turbine blade had broken loose, and within a fraction of a second had removed all the other turbine blades. And that's why the engine stalled. That's why it could not be restarted. And when he did that, you could see the weight of the world go off of Angus's shoulders and his face of, there was nothing I could have done or didn't do correctly. This thing was never. So what unfolded was the engine shop was at Shaw, active duty guys. When they put the turbines together, I think there's 72 blades, if I remember correctly. There's this little tiny spacer that goes in between each one. It looks a lot like a very old style razor blade. And its function is that when it gets heated up, it fills the gap between each of the blades. So all that hot gas doesn't go in there and corrode and destroy the base of the turbine blades so that they fall out. The guy who put the engine together didn't put in a single one. It's kind of a known thing. If you miss one, you cannot tune the engine up just like, a bike tire because it's out of balance. And you'll notice it go, there's a blade missing, or there's that piece missing, put it in, and then you can tune it up. If you don't put any in, it's symmetric, circularly, wise, you can tune it up, it'll run fine for a while. It's a known thing after what's called 500 engine cycles, it's a crapshoot. We were on 550 some odd engine cycles and the engine blew up.
Wow.
So that's probably a long story, but not every. The backstory to that is I heard from everybody, of people I hadn't talked to for 15, 20 years, mainly Eagle guys sending me emails that sounded something like, what part of single engine did you not understand? How many S's are in stupid, and then all this kind of stuff. So, and it was all in good fun, and it was nice hearing from everybody. And obviously everybody was happy that we were okay. But yeah, that was kind of an interesting way towards the very end of my career to do something very different, especially for an Eagle guy. There's quite a few Viper guys, just nature of the business, that have gotten out of airplanes and continued, but not too many Eagle guys have had to do that.
What was the root cause then of the canopy not coming off and of the central fuel tank?
Excellent question. Okay, in fact, the canopy and the tank not leaving are kind of similarly related in that there are things called carts. They're explosive devices that will blow things off of airplanes when you need it to happen. In the canopy for the D model is bigger and heavier. So it has this pole in the middle that helps it go up and down. And I forget if it's the top or the bottom, but at one end of that is a cart that when the ejection sequence is initiated, that thing is supposed to blow up in order to help the whole canopy leave. And that cart did not fire correctly or at all. And so that's why it kind of went back and was unlocked, but it didn't leave like it was supposed to because that little piece failed. And then the pressure of the wind broke the pole or whatever, and off it went. The cart was interesting in that in the Eagle, we have carts that are about, I think, like 6 or 7 inches tall. They're big. And we also have sometimes these little tiny carts that are about 2 or 3 inches tall. The F-16 only has the little ones. And what they kind of learned from my understanding is that those little ones, when they're cold soaked, like up at altitude for quite a while, they don't necessarily make the right amount. So it fired, but it didn't make the requisite amount of gas pressure to move the hooks to get rid of the tank. The Eagle, that hasn't been a problem because the carts are so much bigger that even when they're cold soaked, they seem to have enough oomph to make the requisite amount of gas pressure to move what they need to move and get things off the airplane.
Wow. You've retold the story with great humor, and I don't want to be a buzzkill or anything, but I did want to ask you a couple of serious questions about the sort of the psychological and the emotional aspect. So the first was, as you recalled, the engine sort of shat itself at 26,000 feet, whatever it was, medium altitude. So you've got some time to think about what's coming.
We did.
What was that process like for you? And I guess especially for you in the back seat, because although you can help with the engine relight and trying to punch off the tank, you're in the back seat.
So and that's an excellent question. He was full-fledged mode of handling an F-16 emergency. I kind of, and it wasn't by design, I think it was just by habit. I went into my T-38 F-15 IP role, not because he needed instruction. He absolutely didn't, but just tried to be a calming influence of like, hey, Angus, decision go to Charleston. That's a good idea. I think that's a good call. And just try to be a calming influence of, not like, hey, I don't think we're going to make it to Charleston, but from what I'm seeing, I don't think we're going to get there. What are you seeing? Just kind of, and I don't know if I was successful or not. Angus did great. He obviously could have done it without, having 200 some odd pounds of useless meat behind him. But I tried to take that role of just a calming influence. And as he made decisions, confirming, yep, that makes sense to me. Yep, I think we're going to have to punch out of this as well. Min ejection altitude is such and such. Let's plan on getting out about then or whatever. And that's the role that I took.
And I wanted to ask as well then, and this will be I think this will be my final question, unless your answer prompts more. I'm infamous for saying it's my final question, and it's not, but I think it will be. But you'd said that when the canopy came off and it just moved a couple of inches, you had enough time to reflect on the possibility if it didn't come off, you were in trouble.
That's probably the extent of my thought process was, we might be in trouble and this could be bad. And then it left, and then we were gone. But it did get my attention.
Does it come back to you, that event? Is it something that you see in your dreams ever?
Yeah, no. Betsy teases me because I do fly in my sleep sometimes. If I have, especially if I watch some Eagle videos or whatever that night, I'll be moving around, and she'll go, "Thanks a lot, you're flying in your sleep again last night." No, I did not find the event traumatic. I was very impressed, not with me or Angus or whatever, but just, they tell you when you're going through all this stuff that the training will pay off. You'll do what you're trained, and if you do it, it should work out. That is exactly what happened. So once we hit the mud and we were fine, there was no big emotional rush or, oh man, we just cheated death or anything like that. It was just, hey, we were trained to do this. We got out. We did the right things under the parachute, and we landed safely. That's what they said would happen. Damn, it works. And so it was more along those lines of kind of after, 25 some odd years almost of flying airplanes in the Air Force that, it wasn't a big lie. It actually really, no kidding, works. And you do believe that because you know about others, but as a personal experience, you're like, okay, that was pretty cool. Everything worked pretty much as advertised, with those exceptions, but those work themselves out.
Do you think that sort of part of what makes somebody a fighter pilot and or suited to flying fighters is the ability to not ruminate on certain things? And I'll give you, for example. So
Sure.
So you talk about training, and I get that. So your reaction, you build muscle memory, your reactions to certain situations, it becomes effectively instinctive because it's ingrained in you, and you do things and it works out well. I remember, I've been very fortunate to have flown lots of times in the back of Eagles and F-16s and F-18s and so on. And one of the memories that stands out in my mind was being given training on canopy malfunctions for the Aces 2 seat. And it's, there's an overlap or a torn panel or an inversion or whatever. And this is what you do when you get this, is what you do. And then one of the slides I was given was, I can't remember what it was. It was like, if none of this stuff works, then you've got the rest of your life to think about what to do next.
Yeah. Dark fighter pilot humor. Yeah.
And I thought, that's not what I want to hear. I don't want to hear that. So do you think that, as sort of one of the attributes that makes people suited to flying fighters is the ability to put that kind of scenario behind them? I wonder whether or not, if I were in your situation, I would then start thinking, well, I hope the fucking canopy works. I don't want to be the guy that has, is that something that you have to do? You have to not think about the things that could be?
I think that part of it is a willingness to compartmentalize and categorize risks and kind of come to an acceptance on that those are okay. Because obviously, there's mid-airs that can be really bad. There's hitting the ground. That's, so the ability to take those various risks and accept that they're there and have kind of a decision making within your brain that is, what can I do, knowing I can't completely eliminate it, but what can I do to mitigate as much of it as possible? And that's what I'm going to do. I do think that is a part of the ethos or the fighter pilot way of thinking. I would agree with that. And I think also, it's kind of funny that you said this, but I think there's a little bit of kind of like athletes will talk about having goldfish memory. Is that familiar to you? Mm-hmm. Like if you have a bad play or you make a mistake during a game, of being able to be a goldfish and not even remember it, just kind of move on to the next play. And that is a part of it. But to me, that part is more actually evident if you have a bad sortie, particularly when you're going through a formal training or something, that you're able to just kind of put that aside and then focus on the next one. I think that's an element that helps as well.
If you enjoyed this clip and want more You can go to 10percenttrue.com, hit subscribe. You get early ad-free access to all my content. Appreciate your support.